Welcome, intrepid seekers of the unknown, to the inaugural episode of Grave Secrets Unearthed. I am your guide through the shadows, Mr. Rob Graves, the keeper of artifacts that whisper tales lost to time. Tonight, we embark on a journey into the cryptic realms concealed beneath tombstones and within ancient mausoleums. In this clandestine space, where the echoes of the past linger like ghostly whispers, I share with you the enigmatic stories hidden within the artifacts I've unearthed. Each item, once cradled by the hands of the departed, holds a narrative shrouded in mystery and magic. But beware, dear listeners, for these tales are not merely stories of the past. They are keys to forgotten worlds, and every revelation comes at a cost. The Silent Company, shadowy pursuers of these artifacts, will stop at nothing to claim the secrets buried in the graves I tread. As the Undying Radiance illuminates our path, I invite you to join me on this perilous odyssey. Together, we shall uncover those grave secrets, delve into the cryptic whispers of the tombstones, and face the looming shadows that covet the relics of the departed. Prepare, for the gates to the unknown are creaking open, and the echoes of forgotten stories beckon. This is Grave Secrets Unearthed, where the past comes alive and the shadows speak. Tonight's tale is titled, The Undying Radiance. As we embark on this journey together, I invite you to step into the shadows of my own past, to discover the origins of my relentless pursuit, and the artifact that binds me to the whispers of the departed. After some time exploring, I caught a faint glimmer of green at the other end of the room. I cautiously made my way to the end of the chamber, and I saw it again, a green flicker through the cracks of what looked like a door made of stone. I had finally found myself face to face with the cryptic artifact that has become both my boon and my burden, the Undying Radiance. Its ethereal glow beckoned from the depths of an ancient tomb, a light that refused to be extinguished, an undying flame that whispered forgotten secrets. But I am getting a bit ahead of myself. My journey to this lantern was a bit more complicated than merely happening upon it. I suppose I should start this story as all stories start, from the beginning, in the moonlit village of Eldershade, where the wind whispered tales of the departed. I found an unexpected haven in the care of a man named Harold Graves. Abandoned as a child at the age of 2 and left on the stoop of a local orphanage, my fate took a turn when Harold, a grizzled and disheveled gravedigger with a heart both stern and compassionate, discovered me. He bestowed upon me the name Robert, a title I recall never receiving at birth, yet the unmistakable connection between my name and occupation, humorously imposed by Harold, requires no further mention. He often found amusement in emphasizing this correlation. Harold was the village's cemetery caretaker. He was a man of rough edges and a weathered shovel, and he took me under his wing. Despite his gruff exterior, he saw potential in me. Potential not just for digging graves, but for unearthing the mysteries hidden within the cryptic confines of the graveyards, tombs, mausoleums, and crypts we would frequent. At first, my small stature was used to great success, allowing me to fit into tighter spaces and retrieve things Harold's large frame would not allow him to. As I transitioned into juvenile adolescence, the old man became a bit rougher and the job got harder. I was now carrying our tools and hauling more dirt, and if something needed to be lifted out of the ground, I was the one to do it. Occasionally, the backhand of Harold would find me if he caught me lacking, being disrespectful, or simply because at times he did not know how to properly express his emotions. Years passed, and under Harold's tutelage, in place of a formal education, I learned the delicate art of grave robbing. A frowned-upon profession, I am aware, but nevertheless a profiting and exciting one. Harold, who was once a principled gravedigger, instilled in me a profound respect for the sanctity of the deceased. Harold and I regarded the graveyard not as a repository of morbid commodities, but as a treasury of history, filled with untold tales waiting to be unveiled. It was in these days I first gazed upon the Undying Radiance. though I knew nothing of the power it held. Our expeditions were driven by a shared curiosity about the lives of those who had passed on, each excavation guided by the flickering light of a lantern, aimed to unearth the artifacts that once held significance to the departed. These relics were not mere possessions, but keys to unlocking the stories hidden within the silent chambers of the dead. Harold, in his gruff wisdom, impressed upon me that every artifact had a narrative, a connection to a life lived, a love lost, or a tale left incomplete. That the shovel, an extension of our grave-digging legacy, was used not to desecrate, but to reveal the forgotten treasures beneath the soil. The old man's tough love became a guiding force, shaping me into a skilled and silent excavator of forgotten stories. As we would venture into the moonlit burial grounds, Harold's shovel and my curiosity became tools to unravel the tales etched in stone and long since forgotten. I would soon learn that not all of these artifacts or trinkets were for sale. While we made efforts to sell what we could, Harold's attachment to many of the items we discovered was palpable. He seemed not only keen, but determined to retain possession of certain pieces, hinting at a deeper significance or personal value beyond their monetary worth. This brings me to my earlier warning. The Silent Company, an elusive and shadowy organization who coveted the artifacts and trinkets that were unearthed from the departed. Artifacts that held mysterious power, making them highly sought after by the Silent Company for their own undisclosed purposes. It was not very often that we were not accosted by one of their agents. At first, just mere nuisances, and their advances were rebuffed by Harold. It wasn't until much later that I learned that they would resort to more nefarious tactics. On a balmy evening, with the moon casting a soft glow over the cemetery, and the air thick with the scent of soil and lingering whispers of the departed, Harold and I embarked on what appeared to be another routine excavation. Unbeknownst to us, however, the Silent Company had set a sinister plan in motion. A prominent merchant from Eldershade had recently been interred, and one afternoon, Harold burst into our quarters brandishing a map of an unfamiliar graveyard. He recounted a tale he had overheard at the local tavern about a legendary artifact known as the Whispering Coin, rumored to be buried alongside the deceased merchant. Sketching out his plans with fervor, Harold's enthusiasm was met with my skepticism regarding the source of his information. "Don't you dare question me, Rob," he snapped, his tone sharp and authoritative. "Just prepare the cart, and make sure to bring my shovel this time." I acquiesced, nodding in silent compliance as I busied myself with the preparations. After all, who was I to challenge Harold's authority? Little did I realize the consequences of my silent obedience. Perhaps I should have probed further into the origins of Harold's knowledge. As we delved deeper into the burial grounds, my lantern casting a flickering orange on the tombstones, the Silent Company's agents silently surrounded us. Cloaked in darkness, the operatives moved with a lethal precision, their shadows dancing at the edge of the graveyard's moonlit clearing. We eventually located the grave we sought. I secured my lantern to a nearby tree and retrieved the shovels from the cart. Approaching Harold, I handed him his shovel before turning my attention to the freshly dug earth before us. Its loose texture promised a swift and straightforward excavation, a notion that brought a measure of comfort to me. As I prepared to commence digging, Harold's imposing arm blocked my path, halting me in my tracks. Confusion painted my expression as I gazed at him, awaiting an explanation. "I'll handle this one. You keep watch," Harold instructed in a subdued voice. Acknowledging his directive with a nod, I stepped back, surveying our surroundings for a suitable vantage point. A small hill caught my eye, positioned a mere 30 feet from the grave. "I'll keep watch from there," I informed Harold. Establishing my lookout perch atop the rise, with my post secured, I observed as Harold began to dig, his figure illuminated by the soft glow of my lantern against the backdrop of the moonlit night. The Silent Company, with their expertise in stealth and subterfuge, had employed a concoction of mystical toxins to poison the very soil beneath Harold's feet. Unknown to both him and myself, every shovel's dig released vapors of the insidious substance into the air. As Harold plunged his shovel, breaking through the layers of soil, the poison seeped into his system. The effects were gradual but deadly. A creeping paralysis that numbed his limbs and clouded his senses. I watched from my lookout, my heart pounding in my chest as I observed Harold's movements. At first, they were subtle. A slight hesitation in his steps, a cough that lingered longer than usual. But then, his movements became more labored, his breath more strained. Shadows danced around the edges of my vision, but every time I turned to look, they vanished, leaving me with a sense of unease. I brushed it off as my imagination playing tricks on me, focusing instead on Harold's deteriorating condition. Sweat glistened on his brow, and his once steady hands trembled as he continued to dig. I wanted to call out to him, to warn him of the danger lurking in the shadows, but fear rooted me to the spot. What if I was wrong? What if it was just the darkness playing tricks on my mind? So I remained silent, my eyes fixed on Harold as he toiled away, oblivious to the silent threat closing in around him. As the night unfolded, the Silent Company's plan reached its tragic culmination. The Whispering Coin was a ploy, a way to get Harold out in the open, but for what, I had not the faintest idea. Harold, coughing profusely and gripped by the poison, pulled himself from the grave and collapsed. His limbs betrayed him, and the life force within him dimmed. I ran from my hilltop to the graveside to assist Harold. I was horrified. As Harold's life flickered away beneath the moonlit canopy, he pressed some torn cloth he retrieved from his pocket into my hand. "Keep the light alive, Rob. Let it guide you through the shadows," Harold said between coughs. These were Harold's last words. Harold was gone, and all I was left with was his shovel, the torn cloth, and his words, "Keep the light alive." With no time to mourn, the Silent Company swiftly descended upon me, demanding the whereabouts of the Undying Radiance. Tears clouded my vision, and I could not make out a single face. I professed ignorance of their inquiry. As I knelt beside Harold's lifeless form, fixating on his serene countenance, I sensed a presence looming behind me. Gripping the handle of Harold's shovel, I pivoted and swung with all my might, only to have it wrested from my grasp. A searing pain engulfed me as Harold's own implement became a weapon turned against me. Blinded by a burst of light as the shovel connected across my face, I crumpled to the ground, my face meeting the unforgiving earth. Amidst the chaos, the command to "search him" echoed in my ears, prompting me to instinctively bury the torn cloth beneath the soil before succumbing to darkness. I carry the weight of my adopted father's death like a phantom at my side. The first rays of dawn pierced the sky, rousing me into a conscious state, greeted immediately by the throbbing ache in my face. Blood had congealed over my left eye, matted in my beard, a grim reminder of the night's events. Turning to face Harold's motionless figure, his pockets turned inside out, shirt in tatters. I couldn't ignore the similarity in our disheveled states. With a sudden surge of urgency, I recalled the torn cloth buried in the dirt and began to frantically search for it. My fingers found it and closed around its torn edges with determination. "Keep the light alive," echoed in my mind as I gripped Harold's shovel for support, using it to steady myself as I rose. Leaving him behind was not an option. I slung his body over my shoulder and set off towards home, determined to honor his memory and uncover the truth behind his untimely demise. The tragedy etched a profound scar on my soul, intensifying my resolve to unravel the mystery that had cost Harold his life. The Silent Company, their motives hidden in the shadows, had shattered the fragile peace that once existed within the graveyard of Eldershade. The shack in which we lived, weathered by the ages, stood as a lonely sentinel against the backdrop of Eldershade. its wooden frame marked by the passage of time, bore witness to the quiet existence of two souls whose lives were woven with threads of mystery. Inside the modest dwelling, the air was thick with the lingering essence of Harold, a presence that refused to fade. Days after Harold's departure, I found myself navigating the quietude that had settled over our shared abode. The creak of the door echoed through the empty spaces, a melancholy greeting that bespoke a tale of loss. The interior was a tableau of memories, a reflection of the life we had. Two wooden chairs, each carrying the scars of countless conversations, flanked a heavy table that bore the weight of shared meals and the maps that guided our nocturnal pursuits. A wood stove, its metal exterior etched with stories untold, radiated a residual warmth that seemed to whisper secrets of nights spent huddled against the chill. Harold's room, now a shrine to the departed, retained an air of reverence. A trunk at the bed's end harbored artifacts collected through the years, trinkets that spoke of ordinary lives led in extraordinary ways. Each piece bore no enchantment, but their value lay in the tales they told, a mosaic of our adventures, trials, and quiet camaraderie. Beneath the shroud of Eldershade's canopy, I selected a plot of land free from the confines of a traditional graveyard. Harold had always expressed a disdain for being buried alongside his possessions, fearing they might be pilfered by others, much like how we were accustomed to do to others. I held onto his shovel, now my steadfast companion, and bestowed upon it the name Harold, an homage to the man who had wielded it with such purpose. As the nights grew longer and months passed, I sought refuge in the amber depths of whiskey, my companion in solitude. The bottle, a vessel for drowning sorrows, became a conduit for memories and a conduit to stave off the encroaching silence. The wooden floor absorbed the weight of my body as I sank into a chair, toasting to the absent figure that still lingered in the shadows. In the quietude of the night, I remained ensconced within the cocoon of memories, grappling with the silence that stretched between the walls, a silence that only Harold's tales and shared laughter could fill. I leaned back in my chair as I downed what seemed like my sixth glass of whiskey, whilst at the same time holding that infernal piece of cloth between my finger and thumb. Keep the light alive. I said it over and over again as I rocked backwards slightly in my chair, both feet upon the table. I gazed at the torn cloth and spoke the words on it aloud for the first time. In shadows deep, where secrets sleep, this undying radiance forever weeps. Guard it well, let whispers swell, the undying tale it shall tell. Below these words were 6 symbols, that of a crescent moon, interlocking circles, a twisted or serpentine line, a flame, the celestial symbol for light, and a keyhole. I was startled by a creak across the room, and as I swung my head to find the source of the noise, I lost my balance and tipped backwards in my chair. I hit the ground with a loud thud that drove the air out of me, and as I rolled on my side to catch my breath and regain my dignity, I realized the creak was from a rat that had pushed its way out of Harold's room. I grumbled at the rat and strode across the room to close Harold's door, my hand clasping the doorknob tightly, but I hesitated. I couldn't keep avoiding his room forever. Keep the light alive. His words echoed in my mind, and suddenly it dawned on me. Harold's lantern. The very one he always carried on our expeditions. Yet, on the night he died, we used my lantern. I realized I didn't even know where he kept his. Was that what Harold meant by keeping the light alive? His lantern? With determination, I swung the door open fully, revealing Harold's modest chamber. Stepping inside, I lit the candle on the bedside table, its warm glow breathing life into the space. My gaze fell upon the oversized trunk at the foot of the bed, and I attempted to nudge it aside with my foot for a closer inspection. To my surprise, it remained stubbornly immovable, nearly causing me to stumble in astonishment at its weight. "What secrets are you hiding, old man?" I muttered under my breath, my curiosity piqued. I knelt down in front of the trunk. Why didn't he have his lantern on our last dig? I was hoping the trunk held my answer. The air inside the shack hung thick with the weight of memories as I knelt before Harold's trunk. Its time-worn exterior whispered tales of adventures untold and secrets kept. A longing, born from the void left in Harold's absence, pulled at me, urging me to unravel the mysteries harbored within the confines of this chest. As my fingers traced the grooves and imperfections of the trunk's surface, my mind wandered through the corridors of time. The lid groaned with reluctance, as if mourning the hands that once cradled it. Layers of cloth revealed themselves, each concealing a piece of their shared history. A tarnished pocket watch, a map with cryptic markings, and a leather-bound journal filled with Harold's meticulous script. The flicker of candlelight danced in the alcove as I delved deeper into the history. A peculiar intuition tugged at me. The sense that the trunk held more than met the eye gripped my curiosity. I quickly removed the contents and scattered it about the floor. My gaze lingered at the bottom, worn and unassuming. With cautious determination, I probed the seams of the trunk, my fingers grazing the edges, when suddenly the bottom came loose. The realization struck like a distant echo. This was not merely a repository of artifacts, but a vessel maybe concealing a hidden chamber. I recalled tales of concealed compartments and secret caches that Harold had shared in hushed tones, and now, it seemed, I knelt at the threshold of one such enigma. As the false bottom yielded to my touch, it revealed a hidden latch beneath. A soft click echoed in the quietude of the shack. My breath caught as I removed the false bottom entirely, exposing a trap door. I tried to tug it open, but it would not relent. The glow of candlelight painted a puzzle waiting to be unraveled. With a steadying breath, I applied a subtle pressure, shifting the trunk to the right. The wooden structure resisted momentarily before surrendering with a loud, unlocking noise. Heart pounding, I placed my fingers on the underside of the trunk and pulled up. To my astonishment, the concealed trapdoor lifted freely, unveiling a dark wooden staircase leading into the abyss beneath the shack. The revelation echoed in the silence, a portal to the clandestine realms Harold had shielded from prying eyes. A beckoning descent into the unknown lay before me, promising answers to questions I hadn't yet dared to ask. I knelt there for what felt like an eternity as I stared down a dark set of stairs, which just moments before was an ordinary trunk. My fingers traced the edges of the trapdoor, lingering over the symbols etched into its surface. With a heavy heart and a sense of trepidation, I rose from my position and with quick steps walked out of Harold's bedroom, through the living area and out the door. In the shed just outside, I found Harold, my shovel, leaning against the wall. It felt familiar in my grip, a silent companion in the journey ahead. Beside it hung my lantern. I hesitated only for a moment before reaching out and retrieving it from its hook. After lighting and adjusting the flame, I returned to Harold's room. With one deep breath, I began descending the stairs. Each step a descent into the unknown. A million thoughts raced through my head, a cacophony of memories and unanswered questions. As I descended, I heard the click of a latch, and turning my head towards the sound, realized it was the trapdoor closing behind me. The darkness enveloped me like a shroud, swallowing the flickering light of the lantern. Yet with each step, a glimmer of something familiar emerged from the shadows. The artifacts and trinkets that Harold and I had amassed over the years. Some I recognized, relics of our shared adventures, while many others were new to me, their origins shrouded in mystery. The stairs seemed to go on forever as I shifted the lantern's light from left to right, examining cutouts in the stone that lined the stairway, which housed many artifacts, trinkets, and treasures. Each item was accompanied by skeletal remains, but only pieces, and only one per item. Amid the labyrinth of forgotten treasures, I recognized a few. There was the jar with two faces, one angry, one sad, I was 15 when we found this, but I remembered Harold saying it was just junk. I had wanted to keep it because I dug the grave up all by myself. I was exhausted afterwards. I had mentioned to Harold that I wanted to use it. Harold must have taken it from my pack when I wasn't looking, because I hadn't seen it since. A little further down, nestled among the alcoves, was the ancient-looking mantel clock that Harold had forced me to retrieve from the hands of a fresh corpse when I was only 6 years old. I still remember the smell. My eyes took in its intricate design, holding secrets untold. I had assumed Harold had sold or destroyed them both, the jar and the clock, yet here they were, forgotten down here. But it was what lay at the bottom of the staircase that truly took my breath away. A chamber, much like a tomb or crypt, filled with rows of shelves and cabinet doors, crates stacked alongside stone walls, each holding a trove of artifacts and mysteries waiting to be uncovered. Torches already lit dotted the interior of this room of memories. On one side of the room, a bar was built into the stone. Behind it, rows of alcohol, their labels faded with time, while bottles of unknown substances whispered of untold powers. How much time had Harold spent down here, and why had he chosen to hide it from me? I approached the makeshift bar and placed my lantern on the bar top. I rested Harold against the wall. Anticipation coursing through my veins, I examined a nearby cabinet with several doors and drawers, each holding the promise of discovery, a chance to unravel the secrets that I had been excluded from. After some time exploring, I caught a faint glimmer of green at the other end of the room. I cautiously made my way to the end of the chamber, and I saw it again, a green flicker through the cracks of what looked like a door made of stone. This, dear listeners, is where the Undying Radiance was kept, a puzzle waiting to be solved. I scanned the stone door and recognized the symbols placed around its frame as the ones on my torn cloth. But there was a phrase carved into the stone that had since been scratched out. Examining it closer, the phrase appeared to be written in Latin. Ombre susurrant asclamatis. As I studied the symbols on the torn piece of cloth, their meaning began to take shape in my mind. Each line, each curve held a clue, a piece of the puzzle waiting to be unlocked. With a steady hand and a focused mind, I began to decipher the ancient language, aligning the symbols placed around the door in the correct sequence. And as I knocked the final symbol into place, a sound of sliding stone echoed through the chamber, signaling the unlocking of the stone door. With a sense of awe and reverence, I reached out and pushed the stone door out of the way, revealing the Undying Radiance in all its glory, a beacon of hope in the darkness, guiding me towards the truth that lay buried within. As I studied the newly discovered chamber, my eyes took in the features of the lantern, and I immediately recognized it as Harold's lantern. It looked like any other, except its fire was currently green. I had seen it many times before, but never saw a green flame. That's when I noticed how it was suspended. Protruding from the stone wall was a skeletal hand. Its open fingers curled slightly around the hook of the lantern. I cautiously removed it from its resting place, and the green flame flashed a bright orange, and stayed that way. I stared at the lantern, perplexed. What was so special about it that it needed to be hidden away? Why had Harold told me to keep it alive? Another puzzle to be solved, I surmised. I made my way to the bar, lantern in hand, its ordinary orange flame flickering behind the glass. Placing it down next to my own, I walked behind the bar and quickly scanned the stock of alcohol. Finding a bottle of whiskey and shaking it slightly to determine it was more than half empty, I uncorked it with my teeth, making a loud popping noise that echoed through the chamber. Spitting the cork onto the bar, I took a drink from the bottle, feeling the warmth spread through me. Studying the bottle briefly, I noticed a symbol near the bottom, an intricate depiction of a dagger, partially obscured by a crescent moon and a dark cloud. It caught my attention, though its significance eluded me for now. Taking a few more sips from the bottle before placing it back down, I wiped my mouth with the sleeve of my shirt before picking the lantern back up and began trying various methods to change its flame to green. But despite my efforts, the flame remained stubbornly orange. After some time, and the bottle of whiskey now empty, I found myself near the stone door, staring at the outstretched skeletal hand where the lantern originally hung. Placing the lantern back on it, the flame suddenly flashed green, momentarily blinding me. Shielding my eyes, I felt a surge of curiosity mingled with disbelief. Perhaps it was the whiskey or Harold's absence that prompted my next action. I removed the lantern and watched the flame turn orange, and with my free hand, gripped the wrist of the skeletal appendage and made an effort to pull it from the wall, only to be met with another flash of green from the flame. The blinding flash forced me to shield my eyes, but the pain seared through my eyelids like fire. As I blinked and squinted, struggling to adjust to the sudden brightness, a strange apparition materialized beside me. A glowing figure, white and green, ethereal yet undeniably present. Was it a trick of the light? Or perhaps the whiskey I had consumed was not as ordinary as I had thought. No, this was something else entirely. A ghost. Stumbling backwards in shock, I found myself unable to tear my gaze away from the spectral image before me. It stood motionless, its back turned to me, as if unaware of my presence. Regaining my composure, I blinked, but the pain lingered in my eyes. I narrowed them and focused on the lantern in my hand, its flame still casting an eerie green glow. Raising the lantern to the ghostly figure, I watched in amazement as it sprang to life, its movements fluid and purposeful. What now moved before me was an older man with a gaunt appearance, dressed like nobility. He sported a white-trimmed beard with slick-back white hair. I watched him as he looked over his shoulder and looked right at me, but seemingly paid me no mind. I drew closer to him when I noticed what he was holding. It was the lantern, identical to the one now in my possession. He once again peered over his shoulder, and as I circled around him, an ethereal image of a large rock appeared with a crate beside it. The older man stashed the lantern inside the crate and shoved it behind the rock. When seemingly out of nowhere, another shape walked into view from behind the gaunt man. It was a shape I knew all too well, and I watched in silence as the ghostly image revealed itself to be a younger Harold, maybe in his early 20s. Harold raised his shovel and struck the man with a violent blow on the back of the head. The man fell to the ground and began to try and crawl away from his attacker. Harold stomped on the older man's spine before kicking him hard in the ribs, forcing him on his back. The old man's mouth moved as if pleading to Harold, yet no sound came out. Harold stood over him and struck him hard in the face with the butt end of his shovel, before sitting down on his chest, placing the wooden shaft of his shovel on his throat, with both hands crushing down on his neck. I stared in horror as the gaunt man twisted and wretched in pain, while Harold's face remained calm even as the old man clawed at it. Harold applied more pressure on the shovel, crushing the life out of him. The gaunt man's hands fell away from Harold's face, taking his final breath. Harold stood up and pushed the man aside with his foot rather callously. He pulled the crate from behind the rock and retrieved the lantern from it. I stood there watching as Harold walked away from the gaunt man's corpse, carrying his prize, and I was left alone with the man's body. I breathed out a breath of air as I lowered the lantern slightly and watched as the scene I just witnessed play out again, but this time in reverse. I stopped myself from lowering the lantern any further and instead raised the lantern back up and viewed the scene play out the same way it did previously. This wasn't a ghost. It was a memory. This lantern, this Undying Radiance, reveals the memories of the departed. I lowered the lantern again and watched as Harold came back to crushing the old man's windpipe. I raised it about waist height and the ghostly visage froze. I walked closer, studying Harold's face, not believing what I was seeing. He looked empty. This wasn't Harold. At least not the Herald I knew. I stared just a moment longer when I noticed his eyes. He was crying. I placed the lantern down on the ground. At that moment, the image of Harold and the gaunt man disappeared. The pain behind my eyes disappeared, and the lantern flickered its familiar orange. I took hold of the lantern, hoping to view Harold again, but there was no green flash and no pain in my eyes. Its cool metal felt like a conduit to a realm beyond the living. This lantern would become more than a source of light. It would grant me the memories of the departed. A lantern fueled by the echoes of the souls it had touched. With the weight of revelation heavy on my shoulders, I knew I couldn't turn away from the truth any longer. Harold's dark past, his ruthless actions, they all pointed to a deeper mystery waiting to be unraveled. As I stood there, the flame of the lantern casting an eerie glow around me, I made a solemn vow to uncover the secrets hidden within its flickering light. The old man Harold had killed, the gaunt figure whose life had been snuffed out so callously. His story begged to be told. But there was more to it than just one man's tragic demise. The symbols etched into the whiskey bottle. The words scratched out on the door. The hidden meanings waiting to be deciphered. The numerous journals belonging to Harold that I would find. These held a key to a larger, more sinister puzzle, and I was determined to unlock its secrets, no matter the cost. Nervous anticipation coursed through my veins as I raised the lantern once more, its flame dancing hypnotically before my eyes. I could feel the weight of history pressing down on me, urging me to delve deeper into the darkness that surrounded me. My gaze circled around the crypt I found myself in, at the treasures and artifacts once thought lost to time, and despite my apprehension, there was an undeniable eagerness bubbling within me, a hunger to learn the stories of those who had come before, to shed light on the shadows that had long been shrouded in mystery. And so, with a steadying breath and a firm resolve, I took my first step into the unknown, ready to confront the ghosts of the past and uncover the truth that lay hidden within the Undying Radiance. For in the end, it was not just the stories of the departed that awaited me, but the story of my own journey, a journey into the heart of darkness, where the line between truth and illusion blurred and nothing was as it seemed. So, dear listeners, if you long to hear stories lost to time, if your curiosity is as insatiable as my own, then I invite you to join me down here in what I have called Grave's End. It is here where I tell this tale to you now. It is here that I found solace and peace as I learn about those that I have taken from. And it is here where I keep these dangerous artifacts out of the hands of the Silent Company. Now, be ever cautious, listeners, as their reach is vast, and while I know they extend their chokehold over Eldershade, I cannot guarantee that they have not also spread their darkness into whatever plane of existence you have come from. And so, dear seekers of the unknown, beware the shadows and keep your light alive. Until we meet again under the cloak of mystery, this is Mr. Rob Graves bidding you farewell from the depths of the past, and I hope you enjoy these grave secrets unearthed.